She was 7 months pregnant, on her hands and knees, scrubbing the bathroom floor of an $18 million mansion. Her mother-in-law had just slapped her across the face. Her husband was in the next room texting his mistress. And the woman he was about to marry next Saturday was upstairs wearing a sapphire necklace that had been ripped off her neck when she was 11 years old. Everyone in that house thought she was nobody, a broke girl from the wrong side of town who got lucky marrying into money. A maid, a doormat, a woman too weak to fight back. They had no idea, because the pregnant woman scrubbing that toilet owned the house. She owned every house they had, every car, every bank account. Every single thing the Bradford family thought belonged to them was already hers. She bought it all. Quietly, patiently, over 7 years. $452 million worth of patience. But that is not even the real story. The real story is why. Because 21 years ago, the woman who just slapped her did not just steal her family's fortune. She did something so much worse. Something that nobody knew about. Something that, when it comes out at that wedding in front of 200 guests and 3 news crews, will destroy the most powerful family in Atlanta in less than 15 minutes. This is the story of Tamara Hayes. And what she did to the people who destroyed her life is something you will never forget. The lesson. This story carries a truth that every woman needs to hear at least once. The most dangerous person in any room is not the loudest, not the richest, and not the most powerful. It is the one that everybody underestimates. Patience is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. And the woman the world counts out is often the one keeping count. If you have ever been overlooked, dismissed, or told you were not enough, this story is for you. If that gave you chills, you are exactly who this channel was made for. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this. Drop a comment and tell me, what would you have done if you were Tamara? Would you have waited 21 years, or would you have moved different? I want to hear your answer. And if you know a woman who needs to hear this tonight, someone going through something hard, someone who is being underestimated right now, share this video with her. Sometimes one story at the right moment can change everything. The sound of skin hitting skin cracked through the marble foyer like a gunshot. For 2 full seconds, Tamara could not see anything except white spots dancing across her vision. Her left cheek burned with a deep, throbbing heat that spread all the way down to her jawbone, and her stomach lurched so violently she had to press one hand against the wall just to keep from falling. She was 7 months pregnant. 7 months. Her belly stretched the fabric of the gray maid's uniform they made her wear, and her ankles were so swollen she could barely fit into her shoes anymore. The baby inside her kicked hard, like she could feel her mama's pain, like she was trying to fight back even though she had not yet taken her first breath in this world. Vanessa Bradford stood over Tamara with her hand still raised, her diamond bracelet catching the afternoon light that poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows. She was 61 years old, immaculately dressed in cream-colored silk, her silver hair swept into a perfect chignon. She looked like the kind of woman who hosted charity galas and sat on museum boards. She looked like money and class and everything respectable. She was none of those things. "You missed a spot on the guest bathroom mirror," Vanessa said, her voice low and controlled, which was somehow worse than screaming. "Simone's family is arriving tomorrow for the wedding rehearsal, and I will not have them thinking we live like animals. Do you understand me?" "Yes, ma'am," Tamara whispered. Not because she was afraid, not because she was broken, but because in exactly 6 days, Vanessa Bradford was going to lose everything she had ever stolen, and Tamara needed her to believe for 6 more days that the pregnant maid scrubbing her toilets was nobody worth worrying about. Jerome sat on the leather sofa 10 feet away. He was 34 years old, handsome in that careless way that men are when they have never had to work for anything. He was scrolling through his phone, probably texting Simone, the woman he was planning to marry next Saturday in the garden of this very house. He looked up when his mother slapped Tamara, made direct eye contact with his pregnant wife, and looked back down at his phone without saying a single word. That was the moment Tamara had to bite the inside of her cheek so hard she tasted blood. Not from pain, not from humiliation, from the effort it took not to smile. Because this house, this $18 million mansion in Buckhead, with its 5 bedrooms and its marble floors and its rose garden that had been planted 40 years ago by a woman named Grace Hayes, this house did not belong to the Bradfords. Tamara had bought it 3 weeks ago, cash, through a company called Hayes Holdings, LLC, a company that she owned entirely because Tamara Hayes was worth $452 million, and nobody in this house had any idea. But before I tell you how a pregnant woman in a maid's uniform brought down one of Atlanta's most powerful families, and before I tell you the secret about Tamara's parents that will change everything you think you know about this story, I need you to do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what happens next is something you will never see coming. And drop a comment telling me where you are watching from tonight. I want to know who is rocking with me. Now, where was I? Oh, right. The slap that started the end of the Bradford family. Tamara picked up her cleaning bucket and walked toward the guest bathroom. Behind her, she heard Vanessa's heels clicking on the marble as she headed for the kitchen, probably to pour herself another glass of the expensive wine she drank every afternoon. Wine that Tamara's money had paid for, in a house that Tamara's family had built, on land that Tamara's great-grandfather had purchased 70 years ago when black families in Atlanta could barely get a loan for a bicycle. The baby kicked again. Tamara pressed her hand against her belly and spoke so softly that only her daughter could hear. 6 more days, baby girl. Just 6 more days. To understand what Tamara was about to do, you need to understand what was done to her. And to understand that, we need to go back 21 years to a house in Cascade Heights, to a Tuesday evening in October when an 11-year-old girl's entire world was erased in the time it takes a traffic light to change from green to red. Tamara Hayes grew up in a white Victorian house with a wraparound porch and a swing hanging from the big oak tree in the front yard. The house had been in her family for 4 generations, starting with her great-grandfather, Samuel Hayes, who arrived in Atlanta in 1952 with $40 in his pocket and a stubbornness that his wife said could outlast a Georgia summer. Samuel started with 2 corner stores in the West End. By 1970, he owned 12 properties. By 1980, he had a real estate portfolio that stretched from Atlanta to Houston. He was not the kind of man who showed off. He drove a 10-year-old Buick and wore the same brown suit to church every Sunday. But when Samuel Hayes shook your hand on a deal, the banks in Atlanta paid attention. Tamara's father, David, took over the family business and grew it even further. Her mother, Lorraine, was a music teacher at the elementary school 3 blocks from their house. They were wealthy, but you would not know it from looking at them. They drove regular cars. Tamara went to public school. And every Sunday morning, the entire Hayes family filed into the 3rd pew from the front at Greater Hope Baptist Church, where Tamara's grandmother, Grace, wore her sapphire necklace and told stories to anyone who would listen. That sapphire necklace, it is important that you understand what it meant because it is going to come back later in this story in a way that will break your heart and then put it back together again. Grace Hayes sat in her rocking chair on the porch one evening and put the necklace around little Tamara's neck. The chain was too long, and the sapphire pendant hung almost to Tamara's belly button, and she thought it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "This necklace belonged to my mother," Grace said. "She saved for 3 years to buy it. 3 years of taking in laundry, pressing shirts until her hands cramped, putting dimes in a jar on the kitchen counter. When she finally had enough, she walked into a jewelry store where they did not want to serve her, and she put her money on the counter and said, 'I am buying that necklace, and I am walking out of here with my head high,' and she did." Grace fastened the clasp and turned Tamara toward the mirror on the porch wall. "When you wear this, you carry 4 generations of women who refuse to be small. Promise me you will never be small, baby girl. I promise, Grandma." That was a Sunday. By the following Friday, Tamara's parents were dead. The accident happened on I-85, just south of the Langford Parkway exit. David and Lorraine were driving home from a fundraiser. A truck ran a red light at the intersection and hit their car on the driver's side at 50 miles per hour. Both of them were killed instantly. The truck driver walked away with a bruised shoulder and a cut on his forehead. Tamara was at home with her grandmother when the police knocked on the door at 9:47 p.m. She remembers the exact time because she was watching the clock, counting the minutes until her parents came home so she could show her daddy the A+ she got on her math test. The police officer was young, and his voice shook when he told Grace Hayes that her son and daughter-in-law were gone. Grace made a sound that Tamara had never heard before and hoped she would never hear again. It was not a scream. It was something deeper than that, something that came from a place where words do not exist. 3 days later, Grace had a massive stroke. The doctor said it was brought on by extreme emotional distress. She survived, but she was never the same. She spent her remaining years in a care facility, sometimes recognizing Tamara, sometimes calling her Lorraine, sometimes just staring out the window at a world that had taken too much from her. And then the Bradfords came. It was Monday morning, 8 days after the accident. Tamara was sitting in the living room in her pajamas, trying to understand a world where her parents simply did not exist anymore, when a black Mercedes pulled into the driveway. Vanessa Bradford walked into the Hayes home like she already owned it. She was 40 years old then, sharp-featured and expensively dressed, with a lawyer at her side and a stack of documents in a leather folder. She told the family housekeeper that David Hayes had taken out $12 million in loans from the Bradford family, secured against the Hayes properties. Now that David was dead, the loans were being called in, immediately. 11-year-old Tamara did not understand any of the words. She just knew that strangers were in her house, that the housekeeper was crying, and that within a week, movers were carrying out furniture that had been in her family for 4 generations, while Vanessa Bradford supervised with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Tamara stood on the front steps, clutching her grandmother's sapphire necklace. It was the one thing she had managed to grab from her mother's jewelry box. She held it against her chest like a shield. Vanessa noticed. She walked over to Tamara, bent down to eye level, and spoke in a voice so sweet it could have been mistaken for kindness. "That is a pretty necklace, sweetheart," but it was listed as collateral too, and she unclasped it from Tamara's neck, took it right off an 11-year-old orphan standing on the steps of her own family's home, straightened up, put it in her pocket, and walked away. Tamara watched her go. She did not cry. She did not scream. She just stood there, feeling the ghost of the chain on her neck, and made a promise to herself that was even stronger than the one she had made to her grandmother. Nobody from the community stepped in. Mrs. Patterson from church said she would look into it and never called back. Mr. Johnson, who had been David Hayes's business partner for 15 years, suddenly could not return phone calls. The Williams family next door closed their curtains when Tamara knocked. She entered the foster care system that Wednesday. Over the next 7 years, she was placed in 6 different homes. Some were kind, some were not. In all of them, she was the quiet girl who stayed up late reading, who never asked for anything, who kept a list in a spiral notebook that she hid under her mattress. The list had 2 columns. In the left column, she wrote down everything the Bradfords had taken, every property, every dollar amount, every document number she could remember or find in public records. In the right column, she wrote down everything she was going to take back. She updated that list every single week for 21 years. When Tamara aged out of foster care at 18, she had $43, a duffel bag, and a spiral notebook full of numbers. She also had something that no amount of money can buy and no amount of cruelty can destroy, which is the absolute bone-deep certainty that she was going to make things right. She worked 3 jobs. Mornings at a diner off Peachtree Street where the tips were bad, but the coffee was free. Afternoons at a hotel front desk where she taught herself to use spreadsheets and databases between check-ins. Weekends cleaning houses in Buckhead, where she walked past the Hayes family home at least once a month just to remind herself what she was working toward. She put herself through community college, then transferred to Georgia State University, where she majored in business with a minor in forensic accounting. Her professors said she had a gift for numbers. What they did not know was that her gift was fueled by something much more powerful than academic curiosity. It was fueled by a list in a spiral notebook. It was at Georgia State that she met Nina Watts. Nina was from Detroit, loud as a fire alarm and twice as impossible to ignore. She was studying forensic accounting because, as she put it, I like catching people who think they are smarter than everyone else. She sat next to Tamara in an intermediate accounting class, and within 15 minutes had told Tamara her entire life story, asked about Tamara's life story, and declared that they were going to be best friends whether Tamara liked it or not. They were an odd pair. Tamara was quiet, careful, always thinking 3 steps ahead. Nina said whatever came into her head and figured out the consequences later. But underneath their differences, they recognized something in each other. They were both women who had fought for everything they had, who understood that the world does not hand you anything, and who refused to apologize for wanting more. It was Nina who helped Tamara dig into the Bradford finances. They spent 2 years pulling public records, tracking property transfers, cross-referencing signatures, and notary stamps and corporate filings. And what they found made Tamara's blood go cold. The loans that Vanessa claimed David Hayes had taken out were completely fabricated. Every single one. The signatures were forged. The notary stamps came from a notary who was on the Bradford family payroll. The dates on the documents did not match the business records from the banks that supposedly issued the loans. Vanessa Bradford had not just stolen from the Hayes family. She had committed fraud, forgery, and theft on a scale that should have sent her to prison for decades. And she had used the stolen Hayes properties as collateral to build her own empire. Every house the Bradfords owned, every investment, every country club membership, every bottle of expensive wine Vanessa Bradford drank on a Tuesday afternoon was built on what she had taken from an 11-year-old orphan. "Girl," Nina said, staring at a spreadsheet that mapped out 17 years of fraud. "You are telling me these people forged documents to steal from a dead man's child and nobody did anything in Atlanta?" Nobody cared enough to look, Tamara said. Well, I care, and I am nosy. So let us keep looking. Then, on Tamara's 25th birthday, everything changed. She was working the front desk at the hotel when a man in a gray suit walked in and asked for her by name. He was 78 years old, thin as a rail, with reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. His name was Eugene Calloway, and he had been her grandfather's lawyer for 40 years. Miss Hayes, he said, sitting across from her at a table in the hotel lobby. I have been looking for you for quite some time. Your grandfather was a careful man. Before he passed, he established an irrevocable trust. The terms were very specific. No creditor, no claimant, no spouse, and no outside party could touch it. The funds would only be released to you directly on your 25th birthday. Tamara's hands were shaking. How much? Mr. Calloway adjusted his glasses. Between the original capital and the investments your grandfather made over the decades, real estate, technology, venture capital, the trust has grown considerably. How much, Mr. Calloway? $452 million. Tamara sat down so fast she nearly knocked over her chair. Then she did something Mr. Calloway did not expect. She did not jump up and down. She did not scream. She started crying. Not happy tears, angry tears. 14 years of scrubbing other people's toilets while this money existed. 14 years of sleeping in strangers' houses, eating whatever was cheapest, wearing clothes from donation bins, all while her inheritance sat in an account, growing, waiting for her to turn 25. She dried her eyes, took a breath, and said 4 words that changed everything. I need a plan. And here's what most people would have missed, the thing that made Tamara Hayes different from anyone else in this story. She did not go on a spending spree. She did not buy a mansion or a sports car or a closet full of designer clothes. She kept her studio apartment in College Park. She kept working at the hotel. She kept living like a woman who had $43 to her name, because Tamara did not want to be rich. She wanted to be ready. Over the next 5 years, with Nina handling the forensic accounting and a team of lawyers working through shell companies that could never be traced back to her, Tamara quietly bought everything the Bradford family had their name on. Every mortgage purchased from the banks that held them. Every business loan acquired at a discount. Every line of credit, every investment account, every property deed. The Bradfords never saw it coming because they were not looking. Why would they? They were one of Atlanta's most prominent families, living in a house they believed they owned, spending money they believed was theirs, walking through life with the confidence of people who had never been held accountable for a single thing they had done. By the time Tamara was 30, she owned the Bradfords completely. Every asset, every debt, every piece of paper with their name on it belonged to her, including the house in Buckhead, her family's house. The house her great-grandfather built, where her grandmother planted roses, where an 11-year-old girl once stood on the front steps and had a necklace taken off her neck. Now came the hard part, the part that would test Tamara in ways she never expected, the part where her heart betrayed her plan. Tamara met Jerome Bradford at a restaurant in Midtown where she was waitressing. This was part of the plan. She had tracked his favorite spots, knew his schedule, positioned herself where he would see her. The plan was simple. Get close to Jerome, gather information about the family's operations from the inside, and document everything for the eventual takedown. The plan was not to fall in love with him. Jerome came in on a Thursday night with 2 friends talking loudly about business deals that Tamara knew were mostly fiction. He was handsome in a way that annoyed her, with an easy smile and the kind of confidence that comes from never having been told no. He noticed her immediately, asked for her name, left a tip that was 3 times the bill. He came back the next Thursday, and the next, always requesting her section, always finding reasons to talk a little longer. Tamara reported everything to Nina, who had opinions. "You are telling me you are going to date the man whose family destroyed your life," Nina said, on the phone at 1 in the morning. "Tamara Denise Hayes, have you completely lost your mind? I am going to study him, Nina. There is a difference." "Girl, that is what every woman says right before she catches feelings. I have a PhD in forensic accounting, and even I know that math does not add up." But Tamara was confident. She was in control. She had spent 20 years building emotional walls so thick that nothing could get through. She would get close to Jerome, learn what she needed to learn, and walk away. That was the plan. The problem was Jerome Bradford, not the version of Jerome she expected, not the arrogant, entitled rich boy she had prepared herself to despise. The real Jerome, the one who showed up when no one was watching, was more complicated than that. He brought her soup when she mentioned she was getting a cold. He listened, actually listened, when she talked about her classes at Georgia State. He remembered small things, like the fact that she preferred water with no ice and that she was reading a book about the history of the West End. He told her about his own life with a vulnerability that seemed genuine, how he felt like he could never live up to his mother's expectations, how he sometimes wished he had been born into a different family. And here's the thing about Tamara that made her both stronger and more vulnerable than anyone else in this story. She had spent 21 years without love, without family, without anyone who looked at her and saw something worth protecting. So when Jerome Bradford looked at her like she was the most important person in the room, some part of her, the part that was still an 11-year-old girl, standing on the front steps of her family's home, that part wanted to believe it was real. They dated for 6 months. He proposed at a restaurant in Midtown with a ring that was modest by Bradford standards, which Tamara found oddly touching. She said yes, and the taste of the word was bitter and sweet at the same time. They were married at the courthouse. Vanessa attended, wearing an expression of barely concealed satisfaction that Tamara could read like a book. For 2 years, they were actually happy, or something close to it. Jerome did not know about her money. He thought she was a waitress putting herself through school. And there were mornings when Tamara woke up next to him and felt something she had not felt since she was 11. She felt like she belonged somewhere. She told Nina this on the phone one night, and the silence on the other end lasted so long, Tamara thought the call had dropped. Nina finally spoke. "Tam, do you love him? I think I might." More silence. "Oh, honey. Oh, no." And this is something worth pausing on, because it applies to more people than just Tamara. There is a difference between loving someone and loving the way someone makes you feel. Jerome made Tamara feel chosen, seen, wanted. And after 21 years of being invisible, that feeling was like water in a desert. But feelings are not facts. And the fact that someone can make you feel loved does not mean they actually love you. The truth came crashing in on a Wednesday night. Tamara came home early from a shift. The apartment was quiet, except for Jerome's voice coming from the bedroom. She stopped in the hallway, not because she was suspicious, but because something in his tone made her freeze. It was the voice of a man making a report, not having a conversation. "Yeah, Mama, I am working on it." No, she has not mentioned any inheritance. I know. Give me more time. She trusts me. I just need a little more time." Tamara pressed her back against the hallway wall. Her hand went to her chest where her grandmother's necklace used to hang. "Yes, Mama. I will find out about the trust. She has to have access to it eventually. When she does, I will make sure we are positioned. Yes. I love you too, Mama." The phone clicked. Jerome walked out of the bedroom. humming to himself, and nearly ran into Tamara. "Hey, babe, you are home early." She looked at his face, the same face that had looked at her with what she thought was love, and she saw it clearly for the first time. The performance. The careful construction of a man pretending to be something he was not. Just like his mother. She smiled. "Just got off shift early. How was your day?" "Good. Real good." He kissed her forehead and walked to the kitchen to get a beer, and Tamara stood in the hallway, feeling something she had not felt in 2 years. The old feeling, the familiar one, the cold, clear, razored edge of purpose. She called Nina at 2 in the morning. Nina found Tamara sitting on the floor of her apartment, still in her work uniform, eyes dry. He knew the whole time, Tamara said. His mama told him, probably before he even walked into that restaurant. Every date, every "I love you," every time he held me, all of it was a job. Nina sat down next to her on the floor. Did not say "I told you so." Did not say anything for a long time, just sat there. "So what do we do now?" Nina asked quietly. "We go back to the original plan, but now it is personal." What happened next took 3 years. 3 years of Tamara playing the role of the sweet, grateful wife who did not understand business or money or anything beyond keeping the house clean and dinner on the table. 3 years of Vanessa's daily humiliation. "There are classes you can take," Vanessa would say at family dinners, sipping wine, "to learn how to present yourself in society. I could recommend someone." "That dress is interesting," she would say, looking Tamara up and down. "Is that from one of those discount stores?" Jerome never said anything. Every time his mother dug the knife in, he looked at his phone or suddenly needed to make a call. Tamara tracked his silence the way a scientist tracks data points, documenting each moment of cowardice, building a case not for court, but for her own heart, proof that the man she had loved was not worth grieving. When Tamara told Jerome she was pregnant, she watched his face with the precision of a woman who had spent years learning to read the people who hurt her. And she saw something extraordinary. For exactly 1 second, maybe less, genuine happiness crossed Jerome's features. Real joy, the kind that starts in the eyes and works its way down to the mouth. She saw the man he might have been if Vanessa had not hollowed him out and filled him with her own ambition. Then he glanced at his mother across the dining room table, and the happiness was replaced by something cold and practiced. "Are you sure it is mine?" he said. 5 words, spoken in front of his mother, in front of the dinner table, with the mashed potatoes getting cold and the baby already growing inside Tamara, already forming tiny fingers and tiny toes, and a heart that was beating 160 times a minute. 5 words that told Tamara everything she needed to know. Whatever piece of the real Jerome had existed, Vanessa had killed it a long time ago. The mistress came next, Simone Ledoux from New Orleans. 29, beautiful, an Instagram influencer with expensive taste, and a talent for not asking questions about where money came from. Jerome started bringing her around the way you introduce a slow poison. First, she was a work colleague, then a friend, then she was sleeping over, then she was living in the house, decorating the master bedroom with throw pillows she ordered online, while Tamara slept in a room that used to be a storage closet. Vanessa delivered the final terms over breakfast one morning, speaking in the measured tone of a woman who had been rehearsing cruelty her entire life. "Jerome has found someone more suitable," Vanessa said, buttering a piece of toast. "You can stay and earn your keep. God knows you are used to cleaning, or you can leave with nothing. Your choice." Tamara thought about the phone in her pocket. One call to Nina and the Bradfords would be on the street by morning. One call, and it would all be over. But the wedding was in 3 weeks. Jerome and Simone's wedding, in her family's garden. And Tamara wanted everyone there. Every person who had turned their back on an 11-year-old orphan. Every society friend, every church member, every coward who had closed their curtains and unplugged their phones. She wanted an audience. "I will stay," Tamara said. Vanessa smiled. Smart girl. For 4 months, Tamara cleaned. She scrubbed 5 bathrooms every day, washed Simone's laundry, and cooked meals she was not allowed to eat at the family table. She served Simone breakfast in bed and said yes ma'am and no ma'am, and pressed her uniform every morning and slept in a room so small she could touch both walls with her arms outstretched. The baby grew. Tamara's feet swelled. Her back ached, but she cleaned and she smiled and she waited. Then came the necklace. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Tamara was on her hands and knees, scrubbing the master bathroom tile, when Simone walked in, wearing a bathrobe and a sapphire necklace, Grandma Grace's necklace, the one that had been passed down through 4 generations, the one that was taken off an 11-year-old's neck on the worst day of her life. "Jerome gave me this as an engagement gift," Simone said, admiring herself in the mirror. "Is it not gorgeous?" He said it is vintage. "Probably worth more than your whole life." She laughed and walked away, and Tamara gripped the edge of the bathtub so hard her knuckles turned white. The baby kicked. Hard. Like she could feel what her mama was feeling. Like she was saying, "I am here. Hold on." Tamara locked the bathroom door, sat on the tile floor, 7 months pregnant, in a maid's uniform, in her own family's house, and she cried. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere so deep it does not make a sound. She called Nina from the bathroom floor. "I cannot do this anymore," she whispered. "I cannot." "Yes, you can." 3 more weeks, Tam. 3 weeks and they lose everything. She is wearing my grandmother's necklace. That woman is wearing my grandmother's necklace, and she does not even know what it means. Then in 3 weeks, you are going to take it back. And she is going to know exactly what it means. With 2 weeks left before the wedding, Tamara and Nina worked through the final details of what Nina had started calling Operation Rose Garden, named after the roses Tamara's grandmother had planted 40 years ago that were still blooming outside the kitchen window. The plan was layered. On the day of the wedding, a process server would enter the garden at exactly 10:01 a.m. and serve eviction notices. Tamara would reveal her identity. News crews would arrive at 10:15. A retired judge who owed Nina a favor had expedited the eviction paperwork. But Nina had also found something new, something that changed the scale of everything. While digging through the Bradford financial records, Nina discovered that Vanessa had been siphoning money from the family's investment accounts for years, moving it through a series of transfers that ended in an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. $6 million. Even Marcus Bradford did not know about it. "Your mother-in-law has been stealing from her own family," Nina said. "She has got $6 million sitting offshore that nobody knows about." "That woman stole from a dead man's child," Tamara said. "You think she would not steal from her own husband?" Nina leaned back in her chair. "Okay, I need to say this out loud just to make sure I have it right. We have property fraud, document forgery, embezzlement, offshore tax evasion, and she slapped a pregnant woman in a maid's uniform. Is there anything this woman has not done? You will find out on Saturday." Nina paused. "What does that mean?" "It means there is something else, something worse than all of it, and I am not ready to talk about it yet." During those 2 weeks, Tamara also visited someone she had not seen in a long time, Pastor Michael Hayes, her great-uncle, who ran a small church in the West End. He was 68 years old, with a voice like warm gravel, and hands that were always folded, like he was either about to pray or had just finished. He was the only family Tamara had left, and he did not know about her money or her plan. They sat in his tiny office behind the sanctuary, drinking coffee from mugs that did not match. Uncle Michael, if someone stole everything from you, and you had the power to destroy them completely, would you? Pastor Michael looked at her for a long time. Depends on what it cost you, baby girl. What do you mean? I mean, revenge has a price, and the bill always comes due. You can get justice without losing your soul, but you have to know the difference. What is the difference? Justice is about making things right. Revenge is about making someone feel what you felt. They look similar from the outside, but they come from completely different places inside you, and the one you choose will determine who you become on the other side. Tamara drove home that night thinking about his words. She was not sure which one she was choosing. She told herself it was justice. But the part of her that still felt the ghost of a chain being pulled from her neck. The part that heard Simone's laugh echoing off the bathroom tiles. That part wanted something justice could not provide. That part wanted Vanessa Bradford to know, in her bones, in her blood, in every breath she took for the rest of her life, what it felt like to lose everything in one day. 7 days before the wedding, 11:14 p.m. Tamara was in her tiny room off the kitchen, lying on the narrow bed, with her hands on her belly, going over the timeline in her head for the 1,000th time, when someone knocked on her door. She opened it to find Marcus Bradford. He was Jerome's father, 63 years old, a man who had once been tall and commanding but now looked like someone had let the air out of him. His eyes were bloodshot. His breath smelled like bourbon. But there was something in his expression that Tamara had never seen before. It looked like the face of a man standing at the edge of a cliff, trying to decide whether to step forward or back. "I know who you are," he said. Tamara's blood went ice cold. "I have always known. You look exactly like your mother. Same eyes, same chin, same way you hold your head when someone is trying to make you feel small." He sat down heavily in the only chair in the room. "I want you to know something. Those loans, the ones Vanessa said your father took out, they were fake. Every single one. She made me sign the papers. She said it was just business, that your family owed us money. But I knew it was wrong. Then why did you not stop it?" "Because I was scared of her. I have been scared of her for 40 years. Marcus looked at his hands. They were shaking. "There is something else," he said. "Something I should have told somebody a long time ago." He looked up at Tamara. His eyes were the eyes of a man who had been carrying a weight that was finally crushing him. "Your parents' accident, the truck that hit them on I-85. What about it?" "The driver. His name was Eddie Sims. Vanessa paid him. She paid him $50,000 to run that red light." The room went silent. Not the quiet kind of silent. The kind of silent that swallows everything, that makes the air feel thick, that makes time stop moving. "She did not just steal from your family, Tamara. She killed your parents. She murdered them for money. And then she took their orphan daughter's inheritance and built her whole life on it." Tamara could not breathe. The room tilted. She gripped the edge of the bed and forced herself to stay upright, forced herself to keep listening, because she needed to hear every word. She needed it all. Marcus told her the rest. How Vanessa had found Eddie Sims at a bar, how she had paid him cash, how the investigation was shut down by a police captain who received monthly payments from a company Vanessa controlled, how Marcus had wanted to go to the police, but Vanessa had recordings and documents that she had set up to make Marcus look like the mastermind if he ever talked. "I should have said something," Marcus said, tears running down his face. "I should have gone to the police. I am sorry. I am so sorry." Tamara called Nina at midnight. "It is not just about the money anymore. She killed my parents." The phone was quiet for a long time. Oh my God. Tam, we need to go to the police. Tomorrow. With Marcus's testimony, we can get her arrested before the wedding. This is murder, Tam. This is life in prison. For one night, for a few hours, Tamara believed it was going to be that simple. She lay in bed and felt something she had not felt in 21 years. Not just hope, peace. It was going to end. Justice for her parents. Justice for everything. She actually smiled as she fell asleep. She should not have. When Tamara woke up the next morning, Marcus was gone. He had packed a bag in the middle of the night and vanished. On the kitchen counter, a note on a piece of scrap paper. I am sorry. I cannot do it. She will destroy me. Without Marcus, Tamara had nothing. Hearsay from a missing man. No corroboration. No evidence she could take to the police. And it got worse. Vanessa was in the kitchen when Tamara came out, pouring coffee, smiling that smile. My husband left me a very interesting voicemail last night, something about a conversation he should not have had, with someone he should not have been talking to. She stepped closer, and her voice dropped to a whisper. I do not know what he told you, but whatever you think you know, you cannot prove. And if you try anything, if you say one word to anyone, I will make sure that baby inside you grows up in foster care, just like you did. That afternoon, as Tamara was carrying a laundry basket down the stairs, Vanessa brushed past her. The contact was subtle. It could have been accidental. It was not. Tamara lost her balance, caught herself on the railing, but the impact sent a jolt through her body that triggered contractions. She was rushed to the hospital. The doctors said the baby was fine, but her blood pressure was dangerously high. Ma'am, the doctor said, standing at the foot of her hospital bed. You are 7 months pregnant, and your blood pressure is at a level that concerns me greatly. Whatever is going on in your life, you need to step back from it, or you are risking premature labor. Nina sat in the chair beside the bed. For once in her life, she was not making jokes. Say the word, Tam. Say the word, and we walk away. We take the money, we move to another state, we start over. Let them rot on their own. Tamara looked at the monitor, showing her baby's heartbeat. Strong, steady, 158 beats per minute. No. But we need a new plan, because now it is not just about the fraud. It is about my parents, and I need proof Vanessa cannot run from. Nina did what Nina did best. She dug. She spent 3 days making phone calls, pulling records, knocking on doors. And she found Detective Carl Odom. Odom was retired Atlanta PD, 55 years old, with a salt and pepper beard and the careful movements of a man who had spent 30 years learning that the truth rarely shows up on schedule. He had investigated the Hayes car accident 21 years ago. He was the one who flagged the inconsistencies, and he was the one who got punished for it. They met at a diner in East Atlanta. Odom ordered black coffee and a piece of sweet potato pie and laid out what he knew. I knew that case was wrong from day one, he said. The truck driver, Eddie Sims, did not have a scratch on him except for a small cut on his forehead. And he had $50,000 in a bank account that he could not explain. A man who drove a truck for a regional shipping company. What happened to the investigation? My captain told me to close it. I pushed back. I said the evidence did not support the ruling. Got transferred to traffic duty for 6 months. When I came back, the case file had been lost. I kept my own copies. Odom pulled a folder from his bag. Inside were photographs, bank records, the truck driver's original statement before it was altered by someone at the precinct, and something else, something that made Tamara's hands go still on the table. Eddie Sims died 5 years ago, Odom said. Liver failure. But before he died, he made a confession, recorded by his daughter, on tape. He slid a small USB drive across the table. He said a woman approached him at a bar 2 weeks before the accident, offered him money to cause a collision at a specific location on I-85 at a specific time. He described the woman. "Let me guess," Nina said. "Late 40s, well-dressed, southern accent so thick you could pour it on pancakes. That is Vanessa Bradford exactly." Tamara held the USB drive like it was made of glass. 21 years. 21 years of wondering, of suspecting, of knowing in her gut that her parents' deaths were not an accident, but having no proof, and now she was holding it in her hand. The plan evolved. The wedding confrontation would proceed as designed, but now there was a second layer. Not just financial fraud, murder. And Detective Odom was willing to testify. Nina coordinated the logistics with the same energy she brought to everything. "Let me make sure I have this straight," she said, reading from her notes. "Saturday at 10:01, the process server enters the garden. At 10:05, you step forward and reveal your identity. At 10:10, Detective Odom presents the murder evidence. At 10:15, news crews arrive, and the federal prosecutor I went to law school with is standing by to make a call. That is right. Tam, when they make the Netflix movie about this, I want to be played by someone with good edges and a wardrobe budget. Can we focus?" "I am focused. I am focused on my legacy. But 4 days before the wedding, the plan almost died. It started with Simone finding a piece of paper, one document, a property transfer summary from Hayes Holdings, LLC, that Tamara had left in her room. It was careless. One mistake in 5 years of perfect execution, and it was nearly fatal. Simone brought it to Jerome. Jerome brought it to Vanessa, and Vanessa saw the name Hayes and understood immediately. That night, Vanessa came to Tamara's room. "Hayes Holdings, I knew there was something wrong about you. You think you can outplay me? I have been running this city since before you were born." Then came the threat. "Sign over control of Hayes Holdings by Friday, or Vanessa would use her connections to have Tamara declared an unfit mother. She had a judge who owed her favors. She had a social worker she had donated to for years. You will have that baby in a hospital, and when you wake up, she will be gone, just like everything else you have ever had." The next day, Nina was confronted at the county records office by a private investigator working for Vanessa. He handed her an envelope containing photographs of Nina at her apartment, at the diner with Odom, at the bank where she managed the shell companies. Vanessa was threatening to report Nina for financial fraud, which would trigger an investigation that could freeze all of Tamara's accounts and block the eviction. Nina called Tamara, her voice shaking for the first time since they had met. "She knows about me, Tam. She knows about the shell companies. If she files that complaint, everything freezes. Saturday does not happen." Tamara sat in her tiny room. Her plan was exposed. Her best friend was under threat. Vanessa knew who she was. Her money could be frozen. She was 7 months pregnant with dangerous blood pressure, and the woman who murdered her parents had just threatened to take her baby. She picked up the phone and called Pastor Michael. "Uncle Michael, I think I lost. I think she won again. Baby girl, what is wrong? I cannot explain. I just need you to pray for me. Because I do not know what to do anymore." She hung up, pressed both hands against her belly, and felt her daughter kick. And here's the thing about resilience that most people get wrong. Resilience is not about never falling apart. It is not about being strong every minute of every day. It is about what you do in the 20 minutes after you break down. Tamara gave herself permission to cry. She gave herself permission to be terrified. And then she picked up the phone and called Nina back. "Okay, Plan C. What do we have?" Saturday came with the kind of weather that makes you believe God is paying attention. Sunny, warm, a light breeze carrying the scent of roses from the garden, where Tamara's grandmother had planted them 4 decades ago. Here is what had happened in the 48 hours since everything fell apart. Nina had contacted the federal prosecutor she knew from law school. She told him about Vanessa's threats, the extortion, the attempted obstruction, and then she told him something that made him sit up very straight. "I have been wearing a wire since this started," Nina said. "Every conversation with that PI, every threat, recorded." Nina: "You have been wearing a wire? Girl, I watch Law and Order. I have been wearing a wire every day since I started pulling records. You think I was going to walk into a fight with Vanessa Bradford without evidence?" The recordings changed everything by threatening to file false fraud complaints to block a legal property transfer. Vanessa had committed federal extortion. The prosecutor agreed to hold off until Saturday. He wanted to see how far she would go. Then came one more development. At 6 a.m. Saturday morning, Marcus Bradford walked into the Buckhead Police Precinct. But he was not filing a report against Tamara. He was recanting. In the days since he had run, Marcus Bradford had driven to a motel in Macon and sat in a room for 72 hours drinking bourbon and staring at the ceiling. And somewhere in those 72 hours, he made a decision. He was tired. Tired of being afraid. Tired of being Vanessa's puppet. Tired of knowing that he had helped destroy a family and done nothing to make it right. He gave a full statement to the police, the forged documents, the bribed officials, Eddie Sims, the $50,000, everything. Nina called Tamara at 6:30 a.m. Marcus is at the precinct. He is talking. He is telling them everything. Everything? Everything, including the murder. "Tam, we are back on. All systems go." Tamara stood in front of the mirror in her tiny room. Maid's uniform, pregnant belly, swollen ankles, dark circles under her eyes from months of sleeping in a room the size of a closet. She looked like the least powerful person in the Bradford household. She looked exactly the way she wanted to look. The guests began arriving at 9:30. Tamara watched from the kitchen window as the luxury cars pulled up the circular driveway, and she recognized every single face. Mrs. Patterson from Greater Hope Baptist Church, wearing a lavender hat and pearls. Mr. Johnson, her father's former business partner, looking prosperous and well-fed. The Williams family from the old neighborhood, the Crawford sisters from the country club, Dr. and Mrs. Pemberton, who had been to Tamara's parents' house for dinner dozens of times before the accident, all of them smiling, all of them sipping champagne, all of them pretending they did not remember the 11-year-old girl whose life was destroyed in this very house. Vanessa had invited them on purpose to watch Tamara serve drinks in a maid's uniform while Jerome married someone else. One final humiliation. At 9:45, Nina arrived. She was wearing sunglasses, a church dress, and a hat so large it could have provided shade for a small family reunion. "I am blending in," Nina said, taking a seat in the back row. "Nina, you look like you are auditioning for a Tyler Perry movie." "Good, because this is a Tyler Perry movie, except we have better writers." The ceremony began at 10 a.m. sharp. The preacher was a tall man with a deep voice who talked about love and commitment and honesty, and Tamara stood by the kitchen door, listening to every word and marveling at the irony. Simone walked down the aisle in a white lace dress with a long train. She was beautiful. And around her neck, catching the morning sun, was Grandma Grace's sapphire necklace. Jerome stood at the altar looking like a man who had made a deal with the devil and was just now reading the fine print. For 1 second, as Simone approached, His eyes drifted past her to the kitchen door where Tamara stood. Their eyes met. And in Jerome's face, Tamara saw something that surprised her. Not guilt, not regret, fear. He was afraid, because some part of him, some deep buried piece that Vanessa had not managed to kill completely, knew that what was coming was deserved. The preacher opened his Bible. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. At 10:01, a man in a dark suit walked into the garden. He walked past the rows of guests, past the flower arrangements that Tamara had set up with her own swollen hands, past Mrs. Patterson and Mr. Johnson and all the people who had closed their curtains 21 years ago. He walked right up to the front, where Jerome and Vanessa stood, and he spoke in a voice that was calm and clear and loud enough for everyone to hear. Jerome Bradford, Vanessa Bradford, you are being served with eviction notices. This property has been sold to Hayes Holdings, LLC. The documents are in order. The music stopped. Simone froze mid-step. Jerome snatched the papers and stared at them like they were written in a language he did not speak. What the hell is this? This is a private event. Vanessa pushed through the crowd, her face twisted with a rage that finally cracked the polished surface she had maintained for 40 years. This is a mistake. We own this property. We have owned it for 20 years. And then Tamara stepped forward. She walked out of the kitchen doorway into the garden. Maid's uniform, pregnant belly. Every eye in the garden turned to her, and the silence was so complete that you could hear the bees moving between the rose bushes. She walked to the center of the garden, the exact spot where she had stood 21 years ago, an 11-year-old girl watching movers carry her family's furniture into trucks. My name is Tamara Hayes, she said. My father was David Hayes. My mother was Lorraine Hayes. And this house, this garden you are sitting in, this property you are admiring, this is my family's home, she paused. Let the name settle over the crowd like a wave. She watched recognition bloom on face after face. Mrs. Patterson's hand went to her mouth. Mr. Johnson turned the color of ash. 21 years ago, Vanessa Bradford walked into this house with forged documents and stole everything my family had. She took our property, our money, our legacy. She took a necklace off an 11-year-old girl's neck. Tamara looked at Simone. That necklace, the one you are wearing right now, it belonged to my grandmother. Her mother saved for 3 years to buy it. It is not an accessory. It is 4 generations of women who refuse to be small. Simone's hand went to her throat. What the Bradfords do not know is that my grandfather set up a trust fund they could never touch. I inherited it at 25, and for the past 7 years, I have been buying every single thing this family has their name on. Every mortgage, every loan, every property, every investment. This house was purchased 3 weeks ago. Cash. She held up a folder thick with documents. You have been living in my house, sleeping in my bed, planning your wedding in my garden, and I let you. I let you slap me across the face while I was 7 months pregnant. I let you make me scrub your toilets and fold your laundry, because I wanted every single person here to see exactly what you really are. Vanessa screamed. She is lying. She is a jealous, delusional. I am not finished. The garden went silent again. 21 years ago, my parents died in a car accident on I-85. Everyone said it was a terrible accident. It was not. A man stepped out from behind the garden's stone wall. Detective Carl Odom in a dark suit. Badge visible. I am retired Detective Carl Odom, Atlanta Police Department. I investigated the Hayes accident. The case was closed prematurely under pressure from parties connected to the Bradford family. He held up a folder. I have bank records showing $50,000 was transferred to the truck driver 3 days before the accident. I have a deathbed confession from the driver himself, recorded on tape, identifying a woman matching Vanessa Bradford's description as the person who hired him. And I have evidence that the investigation was obstructed by a police captain who received payments from a company Vanessa Bradford controlled. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Tamara's voice shook, not from fear, from 21 years of grief that finally had somewhere to go. You did not just steal from my family, Vanessa. You killed my mama and my daddy. You murdered them for money. And then you stood on the steps of this house and took a necklace off their orphan daughter's neck and smiled while you did it. The crowd erupted. Some people were crying. Some were recording on their phones. Mrs. Patterson was weeping into her hands. Mr. Johnson looked like he was going to be sick. Vanessa lunged for Tamara, but 2 security guards appeared and held her back. She was screaming words that did not form coherent sentences. Her perfect composure shattered into 1,000 pieces. Tamara walked slowly to Simone, who stood frozen in her wedding dress, tears cutting tracks through her makeup. I would like my grandmother's necklace back now, Tamara said. Simone unclasped it with trembling hands. I did not know, I swear I did not know any of this. Tamara took the necklace, held it against her chest, and for one moment she was not a billionaire, or an avenger, or a wife, or a victim. She was just a girl, getting something back that never should have been taken. At 10:15, the news vans arrived. Behind them, 2 unmarked federal vehicles. Nina's recordings of Vanessa's extortion threats, combined with Detective Odom's evidence, and Marcus Bradford's statement, had given the prosecutor everything he needed. Vanessa Bradford was handcuffed in the garden of the house she had stolen, in front of every person she had ever intimidated and impressed, wearing a $2,000 dress and an expression of pure disbelief. You cannot do this to me. I am Vanessa Bradford. I built this city. The agent putting on the handcuffs spoke calmly. Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent. From the back row, Nina said under her breath, just loud enough for the people around her to hear. Well, she definitely did not build that outfit for where she is going. Orange is going to be a problem. Jerome fell to his knees in the grass. He reached for Tamara, and the gesture was so pathetic, so empty of everything that should have been in it for the past 3 years, that Tamara almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Please, Tamara. I did not know about your parents. I swear, we can work this out. I will do anything. Tamara looked down at the man she had loved despite knowing better. The man who could have been different and chose not to be. The man who let his mother slap his pregnant wife and went back to scrolling his phone. You had 9 months to be a father to this baby, she said. You called her illegitimate. You made me scrub your mistress's bathroom at 7 months pregnant. You looked me in my eyes every single day and chose your mother's money over your own family. Every day, Jerome, you chose wrong every single day. She turned to walk away, then stopped. There is nothing to fix. There never was, because the man I needed you to be never existed. You were always exactly who your mother raised you to be, and that is the saddest thing about all of this. 3 months later, on a Tuesday evening in October, Tamara sat in a rocking chair in the nursery of the Hayes family home. It was the same room where she had slept as a child, repainted now in soft yellow, with white curtains that moved gently in the breeze from the open window. In her arms, her daughter Grace slept with the absolute peace of a baby who has never known fear. Grace Lorraine Hayes, 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Named after her great-grandmother and her grandmother, 2 women who never met each other in life but were connected by a sapphire necklace and a refusal to be made small. The Bradford family was gone, not just from the house, from everything. Vanessa Bradford was awaiting trial on charges of murder, conspiracy, fraud, forgery, embezzlement, extortion, and obstruction of justice. 3 different lawyers had quit her case because she kept threatening them. She was being held without bail in the Fulton County Jail, where the wine selection was considerably less impressive than what she was accustomed to. Marcus Bradford had pled guilty to accessory after the fact and conspiracy. In exchange for his full testimony against Vanessa, he received a reduced sentence. During his allocution, he broke down and apologized to Tamara directly, looking at her from across the courtroom with the hollow eyes of a man who had spent 40 years as a coward and knew it. Jerome Bradford moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. He was working as a car salesman, which was appropriate when you think about it, given that his entire life had been built on selling people something that was not what he claimed it was. He sent one letter requesting visitation with Grace. Tamara's lawyer responded with a 3-page document that included, among other things, Jerome's own recorded statements denying paternity. The letter ended with a single sentence. The court does not look favorably on fathers who deny their children and force their pregnant wives into domestic servitude. Jerome did not write again. Simone Ledoux disappeared from social media for 2 months. When she came back, she posted a long statement about being manipulated by the Bradford family, about not knowing the history behind the money she had enjoyed, about the complicity of silence. She did not ask for forgiveness. She did not make excuses. She just told the truth. Tamara never spoke to her, but she read the statement and respected the honesty of it. Ashley, the bridesmaid who had recognized Tamara at the bachelorette party, sent a handwritten note. It said only, "I remember your grandmother's necklace. I should have said something that night. I should have said something 21 years ago. I am sorry." Tamara kept the note in a drawer in the nursery. The Hayes family home was restored, not to what it had been before, but to something better. Tamara kept the bones of the house, the hardwood floors, the crown molding, the fireplace, where her father used to read to her, but she opened it up, literally and figuratively. The West Wing was converted into a shelter for women and children leaving dangerous situations. 12 rooms, each one furnished with everything a person needed to start over. A kitchen that was always stocked, a playroom for the children, a small library with books about business, law, finance, and self-worth. She called it the Grace Hayes Foundation. And here's the part that surprised Tamara. Because even with all her planning, she had not planned for this. The foundation became the thing that healed her. Not the revenge, not the money, not the look on Vanessa's face when the handcuffs went on. The healing came from watching other women walk through the same fire she had walked through and come out the other side. One of those women was Keisha. 24 years old, thin and cautious in the way that people get when they have been made to feel afraid in their own home. She arrived at the foundation with a 2-year-old son named Darius and a garbage bag full of clothes and nothing else. Her boyfriend had told her for 3 years that she was nothing without him, that she could not survive on her own, that nobody else would ever want her. 3 months later, Keisha knocked on the nursery door. "Miss Tamara, I got the job, the one the foundation helped me apply for. I start Monday." Tamara smiled so wide it hurt. "Keisha, that is amazing. I am so proud of you." Keisha sat down on the floor where Darius was playing with blocks. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Was it worth it?" "All of it. The years of pretending, the cleaning, the humiliation, living in that tiny room while you had enough money to buy the whole neighborhood." Tamara looked down at Grace, who had grabbed onto her finger and was holding on with the fierce grip of a baby who does not yet know that letting go is an option. The plan was worth it. The revenge was worth it. But you want to know what surprised me? The thing I actually needed was not destroying the Bradfords. It was rebuilding what they stole. Not just the house, the life, the family, the feeling of being home somewhere. She looked at Keisha. Your ex told you that you could not make it without him. Now you have a job, an apartment starting next month, and a little boy who is going to grow up watching his mama refuse to be broken. When your ex sees you doing well, and he will see it, because people like that always keep watching, let him live with it. That is the most effective thing you can do, not because it is revenge, but because the best response to someone who told you that you were nothing is to go out and become everything. Keisha wiped her eyes and smiled. Yes, ma'am. After Keisha left, Tamara stood at the nursery window with Grace in her arms. The sun was setting over the garden, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. Below, she could see the rose bushes her grandmother had planted 40 years ago. They had survived neglect, drought, years of nobody caring for them, and they were blooming, deep red, bright pink, soft white, reaching toward the light the way living things always do when you give them half a chance. From downstairs, she could hear Darius laughing while Nina argued with someone on the phone about tax filings for the foundation. Nina had moved into one of the upstairs rooms 3 months ago, claiming it was temporary. They both knew it was not. Tamara had written a letter to Grace, sealed in an envelope, to be opened on her 18th birthday. It read, Dear Grace, by the time you read this, you will know the story. However you learned it, I want you to hear the truth from me. Your father's family stole from ours. They took our home, our money, our name, and the woman who led that family did something that can never be undone. She took my mama and daddy from me when I was your age. I spent 21 years getting it all back. And I did. But here's what I need you to understand, baby girl. The revenge was not the victory. The victory is this house, this garden, you sleeping in the room where I slept as a child. The women downstairs rebuilding their lives. Your great-grandmother's necklace around my neck, where it has always belonged. Your great-great-great-grandmother saved for 3 years to buy a sapphire necklace. Your great-grandfather turned 2 corner stores into an empire. Your grandmother planted roses that are still blooming after 40 years. And your mama took back everything that was stolen, not with anger, but with patience and planning and the most dangerous weapon in the world, which is a woman who knows exactly who she is and will not allow anyone to tell her otherwise. Do not ever let anyone take your necklace, Grace, not the real one, though do not let them take that either, but the one that means your worth, your history, your name. You are Grace Lorraine Hayes, and that name means something. It has always meant something, and because of what we went through, it always will. Love, Mama. Tamara folded the letter, put it in the envelope, and placed it in the drawer next to Ashley's note and a faded photograph of her parents on their wedding day. The house was quiet now except for the sounds that fill a home. Darius's laughter, Nina's voice, the creak of old hardwood floors, the ticking of a clock that had belonged to Tamara's grandfather. And from outside, if you listened closely, the sound of the wind moving through rose bushes that had been blooming for 4 decades and showed no signs of stopping. Tamara looked at the sapphire necklace resting against her collarbone. 4 generations, 5 now, with Grace. She held her daughter close and watched the last light of the day spread across the garden where a wedding had ended and her life had begun again. Not the life she had planned, something better, something that had room in it for more than revenge, something that had room for second chances and fresh starts, and women who knocked on nursery doors with good news, and children who laughed while building towers out of blocks. She had spent 21 years planning how to destroy the Bradford family. And she had done it. Completely, thoroughly, publicly. The Bradford name was finished. Their empire was gone. Their matriarch was in prison. Their son was selling cars in another state. But the thing that Tamara Hayes would remember most, the thing she would carry with her for the rest of her life, was not the look on Vanessa's face when the handcuffs closed. It was the weight of her daughter in her arms, the smell of roses through an open window, and the knowledge, finally, after 21 years, that she was home. And in the garden, the roses bloomed, just like they always had, just like Grace Hayes had planted them to do, just like they always would. If this story touched something in you tonight, do me a favor. Subscribe. Hit that notification bell and drop a comment telling me what you would have done if you were Tamara. Would you have waited 21 years? Would you have walked away? Would you have done it differently? And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, a woman going through something hard, a friend who feels stuck, someone who needs to be reminded that the most dangerous person in any room is the one everyone underestimates, share this video. Because stories like this do not just entertain. They remind us who we are. They remind us what we are capable of when we refuse to be made small. Until next time, stay strong, stay patient, and never let anybody take your necklace. Closing credit. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually crafted by our creative team to deliver meaningful storytelling with real emotional value. Every character, every scene, and every turning point was designed not just to entertain, but to inspire. We believe stories have the power to remind people who they are and what they are capable of. Thank you for watching, and thank you for being part of this community.